If you're ready for freedom from the grind, then passive income from real estate investing is the best way to get you there. If you don't know where to start or what to do next, then the Rent Roll Radio Show is the best place to get you there. Join us while we discuss the best practices, strategies, and mindset you'll need and give you actionable content to get you from where you are to where you want to be. Hey, Rent Roll Radio listeners, as always, I'm your host, Sterling Chapman. Today, we are joined with Allison Bridges from Long Island, New York. Allison, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us, me.
Allison, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, kind of what your background in real estate is, what you were doing before that, and what you're doing today.
Sure, absolutely. So I own a hair salon that specializes in curly hair on Long Island, Curl Evolution, and we have a hair care product company, Curlfection. And I retired from working behind the chair about 4 years ago, and I was home with my children and started getting a little bored and learned more about real estate investing and starting investing in 2019. We've, done a couple of different types of investing. So really just trying to figure out what our niche is and keep things balanced within our portfolio.
Awesome. So I don't know the first thing about hair, but one thing that stands out to me is that both your salon and your product line refer to people with curly hair, and you don't appear to have curly hair.
I do not.
Is there a story there?
There is a story. I had a client years ago. I'm trained from Vidal Sassoon. I used to work in Manhattan, and that's all very straight hair. And I had a client that wanted to embrace her curls about 15 years ago. And I did a terrible job. I couldn't help her. And a good problem is a nice challenge. And so I wanted to support her. And so we started working together to figure out what to do for her curls. And it took us down this path of starting to specialize in curls. People started seeking us out for our knowledge base. And it just kind of blew up from there. And so now the salon specializes in curls.
That's awesome. I love hearing that. It feels so unrelated to real estate, but it feels like it's so relatable to a lot of the growth and entrepreneurial things we run into, right? A lot of times, our biggest challenge or struggle or something kind of turns into the doorway that opens for us. So that's a really cool parallel. I love hearing that.
Definitely.
So tell us about kind of your break into, it sounds like, before you started buying real estate, you kind of already had this financial baseline with this kind of financial independence from owning your own business and owning your own salon. And they provided you with some level of passive income. And so you use that to kind of break into real estate. What did that transition look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of got a little burnt out of working with clients. I had been doing it since I was 16, and I had not been home with my 4 children. And I needed to take a nice extended break. And so the salon was running so that I could step away from the chair. And I stayed home for the first 6 months and did nothing. And not nothing, but, ran around and for my kids and dropped them off, but I wasn't feeling very fulfilled with that. It got old fast. And then somebody had recommended that I listen to some podcasts, and I started listening to Bigger Pockets, of course, and listened for about 6 months, a year, and then decided to take an action and go into my first real estate deal where it was an investment, not just my personal home that I was purchasing.
Awesome. And what did you buy?
Well, year 1, we bought one single family house, and we did the BRRRR method. Cool. And then that was 2019. Then year 2, we did one single family house, and that was the BRRRR method. But being diversified, that was what I was looking at, was that the salon, that's one avenue, and then COVID hit. So that's, that shows you how quickly that stops. And I didn't want to be only having those single family homes. And that's when we started to go outside our area, outside of where we lived. And we started buying small apartment houses. And so we got into the more small multifamily properties that, they don't kick off a ton of cash flow, but they are, they're just more diversified because you have more tenants in the building.
Residential real estate is a weird thing to pivot into for safety in the middle of an eviction moratorium.
It is, but you know what? Our single family homes are in our hometown, and it's expensive to live here. So that's going to be your higher end renter. And we went into $1,000 rentals. So even if the rates were so great that I can cover all my bases with less than half the amount of what we were pulling in rent, and they were all under market rent. So even if I had a couple of vacancies, which we really haven't at all, but if I did, I was more than covered for my risk was covered.
Awesome. So why did you only, so very similar when I started, I think I bought 2 houses the first year, and it took a number of years. But the limiting factor for me was I didn't know that the BRRRR method existed, right? I'd saved up every penny I'd ever had and put it as a down payment on those first 2 houses, and then I was out of money. And it took me another year of podcasts and reading books to realize I could just recycle the same money over and over.
Yes.
So if you started that way, why is it, did the rehab take you that long, or did it take that long to find another opportunity? Why 1 house a year when you seemingly had the magic formula at that point to just turn them?
Oh no, we did all the things wrong. Like we were renovating it ourselves on our single family homes in our hometown. And, we did the floors before we did the paint, and we did things in reverse and brought in different contractors at the wrong times. And it took 7 months to renovate the property. Yeah. And, it was just like learning those steps to, okay, what happens next? And, the paralysis that comes sometimes with, over evaluating your options and am I making the right choice? And, so it just took some time to kind of figure out, and then got all the money back plus 40,000 on that first one. And we were like, oh, okay, that feels pretty good. Let's go do another one. So we did another one, and that happened to be right in the height of COVID. We closed in February, and March was the shutdown. And so we spent the beginning parts of COVID renovating a property and figuring out, how can we get contractors in with, all the limitations that were going on at the time. And that, just took some time to get the cash back out again. And then that was when we decided, let's start diversifying into other types of property, so that we're not just doing these single family BRRRRs that honestly don't make cash flow. They don't make a lot of cash flow at all. They make very, I feel very, the mortgage on them is higher risk in comparison to the amount of cash that's coming from it. So I wanted to make sure that we were in a lot of different other types of properties, not just that.
So something you said that stuck out to me, only because I'm very much guilty of the same exact thing. You're like, well, I pulled out all the money we had into it plus 40. And that's where your high mortgage comes from. And I did the exact same thing. I BRRRRed a ton of houses, and every time I BRRRRed a house, I pulled out an extra 30 grand. You know what I mean?
Much as you could, right? Yeah.
I thought I was a genius until I look back and go, oh, well, none of those houses ever really cash flowed anything, And then it's like, all right, well, I got to kind of come up with a different strategy if I really want don't get me wrong. Like, I'm glad I did it because it allowed me early access to capital to go buy more stuff you know what I mean? And yes, in hindsight, like, it all worked out, and it's a big portfolio now, and it's worth a lot of money. But like the initial goal of like, let's just build these cash flow machines, these passive cash flow machines, like that, just when you're BRRRRing like that and you're bleeding every penny, you're maximizing that on 80% takeouts, right? You're just not,
it's not the cash flow.
It's not the cash flow. And no. And so how did you pivot from there?
Well, we decided to begin investing out of state because we could get those small multifamily properties. And I had started to get some experience with tenants, having tenants. And so we pivoted into looking for small markets that hit checked all our boxes of the things that we were looking for. And, the types of stores we wanted nearby and income levels for the area, and found a couple little pockets that worked. So that was when we started purchasing, the smaller multifamily properties.
I want to ask you something about what you just said. You said it has the kind of stores around that we like. That's something we don't talk about a lot. I have two thought processes around that statement, and I can guess, and maybe they're both right, or maybe we can just use one of them. One of them is like, typically if you're looking for an area that's going to appreciate, you don't want to buy one that's surrounded by like T-Mobiles and like, places where you hawk stuff and pawn shops and stuff.
Yep.
And then, but on the flip side of that, like if you are looking for a great market that's going to continue to grow, and this is something I always like to do. I love seeing like a Starbucks or a Whole Foods nearby, because like they did the market research, right?
Exactly. That's exactly, and that's my marker. I'm a big Starbucks fan, so if Starbucks is nearby and I can get to a Starbucks within 10 minutes of the property, we're good. Yeah. So that's one of my box checking moments there.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then a Stop and Shop or some kind of higher end food, grocery store company is what I'm looking for next.
Where did you end up buying?
So we're up in Colchester, Connecticut.
Okay.
And it's kind of an interesting little pocket up there because the per household income is a bit higher than the surrounding areas. And we're noticing little stores going in, and there's a lot of older homes there, but they have been converted into multifamily properties. And there's a lot of landlords that have been doing it for a very long time. So that's kind of where we were able to come in and solve problems for people and take over and just try to give the tenants a better experience.
Awesome. You mentioned earlier also that you kind of started dabbling in the Airbnb space.
Yes. Yeah, we just had we have two properties now, and I'm very much into trying to stay in the same area if possible, even though I know we're, about 2.5 hours away from the properties. We try to keep them all within a small area. So there's this lakeside community about 10 minutes from the center of town, and they've got these cute little cottages, and there's a nice beach and tennis courts and basketball courts, and people like to use it as a destination place for their family, or they like to go to Mohegan Sun, and there's a winery in town. So it's a nice low key family area. And so we started purchasing, we did rehab and Airbnb together, which I don't think that we're going to continue doing that because that's an awful lot of work, more work to do a full rehab of cosmetics and then go in and do the build out of all the things that you need for Airbnb. So, but yeah, that's
furnishing it and all that.
Yeah, all the furnishings for it and all the the towels, all the things that you need to make a guest comfortable, like a hotel.
Right.
So, but yeah, so that's been great also, and it just gives us another little part of the pie that's a different asset class than the other things that we have going on.
Awesome. And then also you dabble a bit in the larger multifamily space. Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So I'm very much learning to be a lifestyle investor as far as looking at, what's my lifestyle look like and what do I want to be investing my time in, and going into syndications and funds and going with the type of housing that we want to put out for people and aligning ourselves with the operators that are doing those things on a larger scale. But it's stuff that we don't have to necessarily keep our eye on. as closely because the partners are managing that. So we're invested in mobile home parks and affordable housing in some of the southern markets. And then we've recently invested in a technology fund. So being a LP investor in those, and then I had the opportunity to be a GP and do some capital raising for another group that we partnered up with, and we sit on the LP and the GP side for that, which has been great to watch them operate and have input and just watch how a larger operator is running their business.
So how's your strategy changed over the last few months in relation to how the market is behaving and how the interest rate environment is behaving and what we're seeing in the housing market? So I guess this is a double-sided question. What do you think it's going to look like over the next year or two? And then how are you changing what you're doing in the marketplace to react to that?
I think I see more opportunities opening up for people. So I'm excited about that for ourselves as well. Seeing opportunities, but being more cautious. The interest rate's not good enough to go and, all right, let's go ahead and jump in and get in there right away. Definitely taking an approach of creative financing with properties going forward, and trying to leverage that as much as we can to make it a good situation for the seller as well as for us, so we can come to the table with less money out of pocket. So I think there is opportunities presenting themselves, and I think that it'll be a nice market for real estate investors to get into, as long as you're not over leveraging yourself with the interest rate and the cost of your property.
Yeah. So it's so funny because a lot of people, when you talk about the phrase over leverage, a lot of people always, like, their mind automatically goes to like LTV, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
like the loan to value, like, oh, I've got a 90% loan, 10% down or whatever. But really, over leverage is a function of monthly capacity, right?
Yes.
And so those are two completely different things. One is completely interest rate agnostic, like what your loan to value on the property is, and the other one is like 100% interest rate dependent. And we've seen that a lot in the market. Going from like historical lows to near historical I say not near historical highs, but in our adult lifetime, historical highs, right?
Yes.
And you can see, like, being over leveraged isn't having 95% loan to value. Being over leveraged is having a $4,000 monthly payment where you should have a $2,000 monthly payment.
Exactly. Yeah. It's being able to, manage that on a monthly basis. At the end of the day, what you think the LTV is doesn't make a difference when it comes to the actual market. So you got to be able to do it on a monthly and not necessarily on your future projection.
So something else she said, which I've said the same thing. We've heard a lot of people saying it lately. It's definitely a buzzword and a hot topic, is the creative financing or seller financing. Mm-hmm. And how are you going about like approaching sellers? And because seller financing, from my understanding, is like, if you have like an aggressive direct to seller marketing campaign, there's opportunities and there's nuanced opportunities to say, hey, will you carry the note back, and where it works out for both sides. But chances are your general folks on the MLS or your typical deals that you're getting sent are not going to be candidates for seller financing. Like I got to sell my house to buy another. Well, not me, but like, my neighbor has to sell his house to buy another one. You know what I mean? He's got to pay off that mortgage, and he's what I mean? So he doesn't really have an opportunity to carry the note there. So specifically, what are some tactics in which you're taking advantage or attempting to take advantage of this creative financing and seller financing in the market going forward?
Well, looking at the current debt on it, just as an example, a property on the MLS that an agent that I work with up in Connecticut came up, and she had, we looked at who owned the mortgage, and they found out that it was a person that owned the mortgage and not a bank. So we approached the person's children, and they were willing to hold the mortgage. So just like looking down the line of, even if it's on the MLS, it doesn't make it a no. It's just maybe look a little deeper into what's going on there.
So how do you find that out? Like, how do you source who owns the mortgage?
My agent was able to look down into the details of the mortgage, but state of Connecticut does a lot. They do a very good job of listing the information on the public record. So like in New York, I am a real estate agent in New York. So, and it's mainly for my own purposes so that I can get into the back end and look and get into the public record. But in Connecticut, it's different, and it's all public, and it's all up online, and you can just pull the files and you can see what they, all the information that they paid and everything. Where we are here, it's a little bit more like you have to go to town hall, or you have to, so there's more steps involved to get the, or put a FOIL in. There's more information to be, there's more steps involved. So she had just dove in there and looked around at that. But I've definitely come across quite a bit more seller financing. I had a lawyer that had approached me looking to hold the note, but of course they wanted to do it on the DSCR. And it didn't make sense for me to put, that much money into the opportunity that he was presenting. So.
Sure. And so something I found out the hard way, because in my early days when I had no money and I was trying to buy a bunch of properties, seller financing, especially low or no money down seller financing, was like golden. But
yes,
man, it's not always a great deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, people get overly excited about off-market deals and creative financing opportunities, and people significantly overpay and they buy dilapidated crap and they get themselves in that over-leveraged trouble, right? I bought
for sure.
I bought in the early days, a handful of duplexes and fourplexes that with like next to nothing down, and I thought I was a genius. And hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars later, you know what I mean? Like,
it's all back in there.
It's all back in there.
All back in there now. Yeah. Because it's, you're doing it, if you're doing any deal, but the numbers don't, it's down to that monthly, amount again of what are you putting in every month to carry this thing? How much rehab does it need? And to overpay for something doesn't make sense.
Right. Unless you have a 60-year amortization on that, you know what I mean? And it's
now that's a beautiful thing. Now and those are the sellers that I need to talk to.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that where
really.
I think like, and I don't know the details specifically of the underwriting, but like, the most famous, I think, guy these days on the creative financing is Pace Morby, and he was just, he's always talking about this deal he landed at this apartment complex where the seller like put it on like a 50-year AM.
Yes.
And even if he did overpay, if it's a truly like lifelong hold cash flow play, a 50-year AM, you know what I mean? That's going to be a low enough note to where you should be able to, you know what I mean, cash flow pretty well off of that.
Definitely, as long as you're cash flowing.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on vacancy and all the other things, because if your heirs have to go and pay that property off and they're putting money into it to cover that.
Yeah.
Depends.
So what's next for you, like long term?
Long term, we're looking at some more Airbnb properties, and I'm continuing to buy small multifamily, but just on my lifestyle that it is right now. And I've kind of refound my passion for cutting hair and working with the clientele again. I just needed to have that break time where I had a choice. I was previously booked out about a year in advance, and that can get like a little heavy sometimes, knowing you can't take a vacation without making a lot of people upset, or, take off for your kids' activity at school. But I'm now on a schedule where it's good and I can refocus on that and clients. And so paying more attention to funds that are coming up and looking at, working with partners now more so. And also, we've started taking on money partners now also because I've had several friends and family members that have come to me saying, hey, they see the work that we're doing and they want to be part of that and providing, the more affordable housing for people and putting out a good product for them. And so just focusing on that, working with our partners, our money partners, working with other partners on larger deals, and just, raising our family right now while the kids are all busy running around.
Awesome. So I want to hop to our radio round real quick, and it's just 3 quick questions for you. The first one is, what's your favorite book?
Favorite book? I'm going to say, I really like The Best Ever Apartment book by Joe Fairless. Yeah, I do.
That's been my answer probably on 100 of these podcasts. That I've given. That was why I started the show, was after reading that book.
Is it?
Yeah. And
that's awesome.
I go to his conference every year. I've been on his show and he's been on mine. I love Joe.
Oh, it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. What is your favorite quote?
What gets measured gets managed, or whatever.
If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. I made a video about that yesterday.
Did you? Yeah, it's so true. If you're not following your numbers,
Well, you can even, I in the video, and I do these little 60-second videos, but like the example I use is like your weight. Anytime you use one of those little apps where you like plug how many calories you're eating, or you track your exercise, like
all of a sudden, things are real tight,
Yeah. And it's, I would get
extra cookies.
I would get to where I had like a guilt trip about having to, like, I don't want to go tell my app I did this. I wouldn't do it. But
it's a good man too that's going to be honest with yourself and put it in the app if you do it. Yeah. So that's good,
Well, why are you if you're not going to be honest?
Why do it otherwise if you're going to lie to yourself?
It's like cheating at solitaire.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's your favorite quote? Oh yeah, that's your quote. I'm sorry. What's your favorite? Yeah. My bad. It's been a long morning. What's your favorite thing to do outside of work?
Outside of work, my new passion is downhill mountain biking.
Oh yeah,
I love that. It's a hell of a lot of fun. I like things that are going fast, and got some control on the bike. And my 15-year-old son loves to do it also. So it's something we do it together as a family. But it's good if I can because if I can go with him, we can go a lot faster. It's a lot more aggressive on the bike. But I really enjoy that. Vermont, Colorado, it's a lot easier when they take you up the mountain.
Yeah. For sure. Awesome. Well, how can our listeners get in touch with you and learn more about you and network?
Absolutely. So they can visit my website for my property management and our money partners is living-modern-rentals.com. And I'm on Facebook at Allison Bridges and Living Modern Rentals on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, it was great to meet you, Alice. I'm really happy.
Yeah, you too.
To chat today, and I look forward to keeping up with you on your journey.
Sounds wonderful. Thanks so much. Appreciate you having me on.
This episode was brought to you by Crestworth Capital. If you're a busy professional and ready to make passive income from real estate investing, then go to crestworthcapital.com, where you'll be able to download a free copy of our ebook to help you get started today. Until next week, happy investing.